change. Okay.
They know we're here at least.
They know we're here. They saw the thumbnail change. So it's happening. Look at us go. Alrighty. Hello and welcome to July Nonfiction Book Club.
Yeah.
I'm Nicole Sweeney, and this is my YouTube channel. And that's all I have to say by way of introduction.
I'm Dvoki, and I am here on Nicole's YouTube channel
I'm joking,
for today.
And this is not my YouTube channel.
Yeah. Those are the two beings you can be. You can be on the channel, or this could be your channel, or this could be not your channel.
the two genders, channel and not your channel.
Yep.
And we are here to talk about So Many Stars, an oral history of, I think that's backwards, an oral history of trans, non-binary, genderqueer, and two-spirit people of color by Caro De Robertis, which is, as the title suggests, is an oral history. And broken down into, I don't really know how you, that the summary is thorough, that is what it's about.
Yeah.
It's broken down into 4 parts. Part 1, emergence, has so this is a chapter on childhood, a chapter on like family dynamics, and then a chapter on first adventure, so like first, explorations into their identities. Part 2 is forging lives. So this is, migrations, moving places, intimacies, transitions, and then chosen family. Part 3, being the change, is activism and art. Is what all of those chapters are about. And then part 4 is horizons. And this is a lot of like later evolutions. So, people kind of coming to their identities later. What is gender? Thoughts for younger generations. And then the last chapter is visions for the future. And yes, as Susan says in the chat, it is exactly what is described on the tin. Could not be more more descriptive about this book. Oh no.
Yeah, I think maybe I think one thing, I mean, I guess it kind of tracks because it's an oral history, but it's like pretty much everyone who's part of the oral history is older. Like they have been around for decades, and I think that's like useful because I think it kind of gives you a sense of the time scale that they're really talking over. Like there are people who are in their 60s, maybe even 70s in this book. So yeah, it's definitely covering a lot of time.
Yeah, and that's one of the things I think that was so interesting too, is even in the introduction, as they're talking about the scope of the book and the scope of the project, just introducing this idea of interviewing a bunch of trans elders and just, I don't know, emphasizing the degree to which those are voices that are like not heard often, and just like the idea of trans elders, like, I don't know, just like the significance of that. There are so many places throughout the book where that idea kind of keeps getting driven home. Just like the presence of that. Yeah,
and it might also be helpful to note this is part of the book is like from interviews that are part of something called the Baldwin Emerson Elders Project. And so apparently you can also see like the full interviews and like more pictures and everything like on the website. So which I thought was just really cool. Yeah.
Oh, I did not do that.
Because like my like one minor I haven't seen it, but like my like what okay, so I have 2 deeply minor complaints about this book, and everything else I loved. One is just the audiobook, because it's an oral history, it's hard to listen to as an audiobook because it's the same narrator throughout it all.
Yep.
And I was like, do you have the audio recording? Because I would love to just hear the audio recording.
Yes.
And then this would be like the most amazing audiobook in the world, right?
Correct.
And then my other one very minor complaint is that the book dives right in with the oral history, and you don't get biographies of the narrators until the very end. So I had to like actually go back. Like I was starting to read it, and I was just having I think it's one of those things that doesn't seem immediately like you have to have that, but oral history is like one of the things you need is to be able to know who the different people are, and kind
Yes.
of jumping right into what was your childhood. It was difficult for me to keep track of like who is who, because I know so little about all of these people that it like I just had no other context clues to kind of like attach them, or just like descriptors or anything like that to be like that's who this person is. Whereas like if you read like, you know, like an oral history of like, I don't know, like there's this great one about like the history of the indie music scene in New York City, and like they
Uh-huh.
tell you like, you know, this is who this, like the first time they introduce them, it's like in parentheses what band they were in, like that
Right.
kind of thing like helps a lot, where you're just like, okay, cool, I can like
Yes.
piece that together. So I ended up skipping to the end, reading the biographies, and then going back and forth. Those are my two complaints, and like otherwise I love this.
Yeah. That's I had sort of a similar struggle with this, just in that I would have loved to have had more grounding for who the people are. The thought that I kept having is twofold. Either, as you pointed out, like giving the including the actual transcript or the actual audio, I guess, of the recordings if possible, instead of having Caro De Robertis narrate, which, you know, generally speaking, I love narrated by the author, but this is like the one case where I was like, ooh,
Right.
I wish that you had included all of the interviews. Or my other thought was that, like, man, I actually would much rather be like watching this as a docu-series. Like, I
Yeah.
wish, I mean,
Yeah.
I understand why this is not that.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, the scope of trying to produce something like that is very different and is harder, basically. But I that was the thing that I kept thinking, is like, man, I wish that's
Yeah.
what this was.
And I also like wonder, because like especially if like when I got to the end and realized like, oh, this is part of this bigger project, where you're like, I wonder if part of the point is to have it in multiple forms, where like part of the point is to have a book, like just to have
Yeah.
something that is like in text form, so it's not beholden to all of the myriad things that you have with video too. Like just
Yes.
having it in different formats is really,
Yeah.
I like that.
I love the way that it was edited. That, like, that, all of that being said, like, I love, so other than this thing of, it would have been preferable to have had biographies up front, to have led with just a basic framework for who all of these people are, so that you can like be building on it, you know, as the stories go. You start to you kind of build out the biography of each of these people. So I understand why it was laid out. I understand why it wasn't front loaded with the with kind of short biographies. I wish there had been, but that being said, like the rest of the editing, the way that the way that the chapters build, and the way that the interviews sort of talk to each other without necessarily, I assume, having to have actually, I would assume that most of these were kind of one-on-one interviews, but they like
Yeah,
transition back and forth in really lovely ways throughout the book, which I
for sure.
appreciated.
Yeah, I agree too. Like my like one issue always with oral histories, like I always like the idea of them, but especially like a lot of pop culture ones, they end up like feeling to me like really disappointing in the end, because like I've read, you know, I read the Meet Me in the Bathroom, which I really loved. It's
Uh-huh.
great oral history of indie music. I've read Not All Diamonds and Rosé, which is an oral history of Real Housewives on Bravo.
Sure.
And they always seem like the one thing like that one. Okay, so those are two oral histories that I have like different levels of affection for. The Bravo one was actually, I thought, kind of disappointing. But part of the issue is like, I think with a lot of oral histories is that it's really hard to do any kind of like analysis. Like that's not really what an oral history can do. Like all like
Mm,
I you can do a little bit, but the author is so removed from what they're doing. Like their function is just to like kind of put quotes next to each other, and they're like letting you do your analysis like along the way,
right.
that like I just find it ultimately to be not as interesting as like a proper like critical essay or like history, like something where, you know, the author is more front and center. That's like a
Right.
personal preference.
Yeah.
That's just like my relationship to oral histories. I still like will always read one, and especially like the ones that are like behind the scenes kind of things.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. But this was like, I felt like such like the perfect use of an oral history, because it is so much about putting the history into words. Like it is
Right.
literally like, that is the point right there, is to like capture the history, and also to capture like the way that it's so multifaceted, the way that people have different relationships to like words and language, but also
Uh-huh.
to the culture and, you know, different aspects of this. Like it's just, it's like, this is like what an oral history for me is like for.
Yeah. Well, and it's also very much about the way that it felt. Like it is
Mhm.
a, let's see, for some of the oral histories where it doesn't quite land, where you're like, I don't know that an oral history was the correct way to tell this particular story. It's often in cases where you're like, I want like the details or the analysis or like whatever, like there's something that is missing. In this case, part of what is so significant about the history is the lived experience of the history, right? Like, is what it
Yeah.
felt like to be in those moments, to as opposed to a string of like facts and stats and figures, like that. So in that sense, like that is precisely the kind of thing that lends itself so well to an oral history. And then the other thing is, I think central to the project of this book is these are people that have always been here. They are here and they have always been here and they always will be here. And so an oral history is the correct format for that, because it's the people. Like, it's one thing for Caro De
Yeah.
Robertis to write a book that says there are lots of trans people, right? Like, okay, and
Yep.
right, but to have those people actually present and speaking and explaining history and context is makes the point so much more effectively than something else could.
Right. Yeah, and it's like the concept of like elders, like you can't just like say elders over and over and again, right? Like
Yes.
the point is to like put elders like front and center and to be like, this is like, these are their stories, and like this is the way that their stories overlap, this is the way that their stories don't overlap. Like I just, yeah, I really love this book.
Yeah. Yes.
I feel like of all the books we've read, this is the one I feel like the most like affection for. I don't like there's something about it
Tender.
where you're just like, I have so much. Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Yes.
tender's like a good way to describe it.
Yeah. Yeah. I have a very like tender-hearted feeling towards it. I also think about how and like tender. I have a very tender feeling toward it, and there's something so tender in its creation too that you can feel while you're reading
Hmm.
it. I
Yeah.
like the ways in which it's creating a space and the voice, as Susan says in the chat, like the people are the story, and
Yep.
like, and also being a vision, like being a presence, and being, as you said, like you can only say elder so many times, but to actually say like, yep, they're here, like they are here, they cannot be erased. And I love the final chapter, the visions for the future. I think that's something that
Hmm.
has come up in different ways with all of the nonfiction books, is like, how much of a like, now what is there. This is something we talk about at work all the time too, of like,
Right.
you know giving people, let's see, to speak in more concrete terms, we struggle a lot with videos that are like very climate change centric. They don't tend to do
Hmm.
very well for us, and I think that a big part of it is that it's like people are reacting to this thing of like, yep, doom and gloom, and the problem is beyond my control and I can't do anything about it. So like, if you're giving people something like big and scary and heavy, you also have to give them some sort of now what, like, what are you going to do with this, like what, like
Yeah.
what do you want me to do with it, this big heavy thing that you've just set into my lap, like what do I do with that? And so I love the like the very clear kind of now what of this book. I thought was
Yeah.
really 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 beautiful.
Yeah, I really like in that last section, really my favorite chapter in the whole book was the later evolutions one, where they're talking just like about like what it feels like to be old. And
Yeah, 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 yeah.
and it's such like a like I got really emotional reading it, because I was just like because they're also like, some of them are like so emotional about it too. Like some of them are like, I like didn't think
I
that I
didn't
was
think
gonna
that I
get
would
to
be.
be
Yeah.
60. Yeah. And then like also just like the way that they talk about like the experience of being older and like the perspective of it and everything. I just really, yeah, I really loved that chapter so much, where it's just
Yes.
like, yeah, because I think, it's like, I mean, it feels so trite to say, but like we don't like appreciate the joys of getting older, right?
Yeah.
Like I'm using we so broadly here, but like
yeah.
in general, like we live in a culture that like very much fetishizes youth. And then like you hit your 30s and it's all downhill from there.
As
And
women
I just
especially, you're like, ah,
yeah,
okay.
exactly.
I basically don't
Your eggs
exist
shrivel
anymore.
up, you like cease to matter, like all of that.
Yes.
And I think like the way that they just like talk about the ways that being older has like just like affects the way that they see the world, the way it shapes the way that they like see the journey that they've been on. Like it's just, and especially because by that point you have been on a journey with them, and like obviously like we're not covering every single detail of their lives. Like there's clearly a lot of their journeys that we're not touching, and like we're not getting to hear everything about, but you still like understand that like everyone in this book has really like lived life. It like it's just so like it was just very gratifying to see like the way that they like reflected on their journey as well.
Yes, yeah. To hear them like reflect on that and take a moment to give them the space to do that, of like, hey, it is incredible actually.
Yeah.
And it's funny too, because again, so much of the project of this book is signaling just like the presence, like their presence, and so that chapter I think is really important, because it feels like in many ways the heart of this project, to sort of sit with that, and also it's interesting because throughout the book there are so many little one-off comments. I can't think of a great example off the top of my head, but where I just kept having the thought where it's like, oh yeah, this is you're talking to somebody in their like 60s or 70s. Like there's just like little ways that they talk about things where it's
right.
just, it's funny because okay, as a a white woman, I have elderly relatives that are where you're like, man, I don't know about grandpa. We gotta watch. I don't know what grandpa's gonna say. And so to have this book of like elderly like trans people of color still like make, I don't know, have like a comment, like it's not quite the
frankness.
same, not quite the same thing as what my white grandpa might say, but still this tone of of frankness, of, oh, there was one, it was a comment about it was when they were talking about, I forget like the basic setup, but it had something to do with using bathrooms, and saying something about, they had the big silicone titties and you want her to use the boys, but like something about like the phrasing where I was like, this is someone in their 60s or 70s talking to me right now.
Yeah. And that is also where I'm like, man, I really wish I had the audio for this.
Yes.
Like,
yes. Yeah. I want the real audio. I want, I don't want the narration. Yes.
Yeah. And I think Susan brings up this point of like being glad it came out, but also wishing like before this year, like being able to like hear more takes on like what's going on now. And it's hard because like I think it's also good that this book stands sort of like on its own, like separate from like the given moment in time, but also it's a time.
It's a time.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. It's a time. On that, I don't know, darker, more somber note, I also really appreciated the AIDS chapter. Mostly because like it's one of those things that I have heard a lot about, have a lot of, like loose context for, of this bad, but I think that there was something particularly, even with all of that, there was still something I don't know, like new and shocking isn't the right word, but very like deeply affecting, of hearing people talk about going to, there's specifically somebody talks about there were 4 or 5 funerals a week, and like that, like the idea of attending 4 or 5 funerals a week, like that is ghastly. Like that is absolutely ghastly, in a way that like when you're talking about sort of like cohort numbers, like you think about this idea of, okay, like large numbers of people from a group, like, high mortality numbers, high whatever, but like we're not talking about, we're talking about your friends. Like this is, knew like in your social circle, in if it wasn't all your friends, maybe it was friends of friends or whatever, but like you had enough proximity to be attending 4 or 5 funerals a week. That is
Yeah.
inconceivably ghastly. And so like having I don't know, just having that like broken down in that way, I also thought was really just like beautiful and affecting and like haunting. I will think
Yeah.
about that forever. Like the idea of I just
Yeah.
the idea of attending 4 or 5 funerals a week is I that will stick with me forever, because that's awful, awful.
Yeah, I can't remember. I don't want to misquote it, but there was like I had a similar moment too where I think one of them was talking about um finding out that they had HIV, and I feel like they framed it as like I didn't know if like this would be my last shower or something.
Yeah.
I can't find it. And that was like, yeah, that was my like the image for me that really stuck. And I think the other thing that I really appreciated is the thing that I learned a lot from was how they were talking about like the funding and like how that translated into like what resources people were able to access, and how like demeaning it was in
Yes.
terms of like because a lot of this chapter is about the fact that because trans people were basically not recognized, uh like they it was very difficult to access funding, and so I think it was a lot of trans women had to basically say that they were men to be able that to be able to access funding,
Yes.
or to access resources. And so it was just like really bad. And then there's a whole section that I really also was so curious about, and I wanted to see like now I like want to learn more about. I think who was it? So I think it was, yeah, it was around page 186. It's a long story from Nelson Delerta Perez, where they were talking about how the Department of Public Health like kind of shifted. Like there was
Oh.
like a really great like they had like a good kind of community center kind of or kind of community related group kind of going on to
Uh-huh.
bring in, yeah, traditional healers, talking circles and all this stuff. They were arguing that it was traditional mental health services, and that was part of what they were able to kind of make work. And then the Department of Public Health in San Francisco started changing their funding policies. They wanted it all to be a medical model, so they cut the budget. They put health centers at the lead.
That like
So I that's
harm
the thing that
reduction,
I
the modeling pieces of this, of like harm reduction, community based harm reduction models versus like medical model, like yeah, that
yeah,
framing.
yeah, that's like
Yes.
something that I like really want to read now, like a
Yeah.
whole book about of like
Yes.
that tension between these two approaches.
Yeah.
Because yeah, that was just really, really striking. Like they say now most of the communities of color are serviced by the San Francisco AIDS Foundation, and they're all white. And so it's just like there is like a lot loaded
Yeah.
into
Yes.
that sentence.
Yes.
Um
Yes. This is
yeah.
something
I
my mom used to work in prevent like drug prevention, and like this is a thing, like
Mhm.
this idea of like how it, that you have a lot of like grants and like large funding that is rooted in we have done the research and this is the practice, but like in reality, what works best is if you're going into communities and you're finding, like her job was like helping to train community led, like if you ran an organization in your community, and so like how do you like find resources, how do you like collaborate with people, and how are you doing things that are how are you building systems that are built around your community, as opposed to
yeah.
like us in the DC office saying here's the solution, like here's how you reduce problems, and this like the focus heavily on harm reduction, and like community by
Yeah.
community differences, and like finding the correct community partners. Yeah, it's like one of those things that applies to so many
Yeah.
like sociocultural issues, like it's like a broad,
Right.
far reaching framework.
Yeah, because like I feel like you can feel the way that this chapter, I mean, like I already said, like I could read a like basically a book just like about a thing that's covered
Yeah.
in like one paragraph, like basically one sentence. But
Uh-huh.
like you can feel the way that this chapter is like really like a huge book on its own, right? Like
Yeah.
because like just to simplify, it had to be focused basically on access to resources. Like that's sort of like what everything kind of boils down to in this
Uh-huh.
chapter. But
Uh-huh.
there's so much more here that like it's just doesn't have like it has to focus on something, and
Right,
so
right.
that's what it focused on. And so I'm saying none of that, like to be clear, I'm not criticizing it
No,
because
no,
it's like I
no.
think that was effectively done, but it's just like, oh man, like I like there's so much to learn here that I
Yeah.
really, yeah, I agree. For me, it was like this chapter and the one I mentioned before that were like the ones that I feel like not stood out the most, but like were the ones that like really like embedded themselves like in
Yes.
my memory
The
the
ones that
most.
you are most likely to think about, like,
Yeah,
in the future, where you're like, yes.
yeah,
Yeah, earlier also in that chapter, I was trying to figure out, I was like, there was something else that I had highlighted, but it's to what you were talking about, like the navigating the process of getting access to resources, and like the different,
yeah.
all of the different approaches and tactics that people were taking. And Tina Valentin Aguirre, on page 178, says something about how what I learned was, yes, gender is part of this. Just talked about like people being like confused by
Mhm.
her essentially in her presentation, because she was so feminine. So what I learned was, yes, gender is
Yeah,
part of what I bring to all this work. It can also be a tool. People are confused by gender. That's okay. I can use that. And like that
yeah,
sort of like navigating that tension. I don't know. I thought that was really
yeah. I love that
interesting.
too. Like on the previous page too, that like stood out to me where she said, like, I would show up as me in these meetings. I would use my gender honestly as a way to confuse people. What I found is, oh, somebody wants to focus on how pretty I am and what kind of lipstick I'm using or whatever. Good. Because I'm going to follow it up with, why have you done such a poor job distributing millions of dollars? And that's resulting in our debts. Let's get to the point now.
Yes.
Yeah.
It kind of reminds me of this is so, I don't know, maybe internet brain rot that this is like immediately where I'm going, but there's this like very famous clip of Paris Hilton talking to Congress, where she's, and it's like a like code switching in this clip, but where she's, I forget what she's even being asked about, but like something about, they're talking about like her bag or whatever, and she answers that question in her very like classic famous like high pitched kind of Bambi voice, and then
Yeah.
like immediately then drops down. And so what I'm here to talk to you about today is and like the
Yeah.
I don't know, I'll find the clip and link it in the
Yeah.
description, because
I
it's
kind of can't believe I haven't seen that.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
It feels like the part of culture that should have reached me by
It
now.
does. It feels very much like something you should have seen. It's shocking to
Yeah.
me.
Yep.
Feels very Deboki coded. I don't know how.
Yeah, extremely. Yeah. Oh, I love this book.
Yeah, I really loved this book a lot. Now I'm like, I want to go. I gotta go search for this clip.
Find Paris Hilton.
Paris Hilton Congress voice change. That's the one. That's you people knew. I don't know. I don't think I can play it for you, and I can play it on the stream, but you won't hear it. So I'll have to,
Right. Well, that's okay.
you know.
I can Google at some point.
Here, wait. I'll play it. I'll play it on the stream.
Okay.
Let people hear it. Okay, hold on. Oh, it's not playing.
Yeah, the sparkles are
mute the
amazing.
stream.
Here we go.
Well, thank you. I enjoyed our Zoom call, and I love your jacket. The sparkles are amazing.
I had a little bling here for today.
Yes, I wanted to find out who made it later.
But I think the most important thing is we need access to therapy, counseling, mentorship, and other community-based programs. And I think it's also important to not label these kids as troubled or bad.
Anyway, so it's like, it's jarring. But it's a
Yeah.
that is like exactly the thing. Like that's exactly what Tina is talking about here. That's that same basic thing
Yeah.
of like, oh yes, do you want to focus on my lipstick? Okay. Anyway, why are you doing such a poor job of distributing this money? Like,
Right.
it's that phenomenon.
Yep. Yeah.
So anyway, thank you, Paris Hilton.
Not the person I thought we were going to talk about today.
That wasn't my plan either, but
Yeah.
while we were on the subject, I just felt like
Yeah.
I had to bring it up, had to show it off. So
Yeah.
anyway, what else? I didn't
don't
take
know,
as many
man.
notes as I often do, just because I
Yeah.
was like I was just so absorbed in it that I didn't have as
Right.
many like stopping points of
Yeah. And again, because it's like not an analysis book,
Yeah.
I think it's like one of those things where like I have really so little to say like about any themes, especially like I feel like this is a book where like I don't know, it feels so like I don't know, East Coast liberal to say this, but like I'm here to listen and learn. Right? Like that is what I can sort of feel like. And I'm listening and learn like, and it's like I mean, and everything else, it's like it's really well done, and I have a lot of affection for it, and I think it did like it covered a really wide range of things that for me are like very uh illuminating. Like again,
yeah.
and so I like I loved like every chapter in this book, and I think I'm like I think that's like, yeah, that's like where I'm at, where it's, we were talking about this last time where it's like with a 3-star book, it's hard to talk about. This is not a 3-star book.
No.
Like this is absolutely for me, like a 5-star book. Like I would
Yes.
recommend people read it. I like, and also like it's difficult to talk about for other reasons because it's like, yeah,
Because you should read it is actually the
Yeah,
thing where
yeah.
as Susan says, this is it, sit and listen to your elders. Like the
Right.
like the takeaway is more like I actually don't want you to hear what I have to say about this book. I want you to go pick this book up is actually my biggest takeaway, more so than I think any other book that we have read on here. Like I think
Right.
for every other book, this more than any other book we have talked about for Nonfiction Book Club, my takeaway is actually like you just need to pick up the book, as opposed to other things where I'm like, hey, we can talk about some of the high level ideas, like other books that I genuinely loved, where I still would be like, I want people to read this. I feel like I have more things to say in terms of discussing the high level ideas, but in the case of this book, so much of the point is listening to these people talk. So it feels less summarizable for that reason.
Yeah, and I guess like if anything, then it's like, okay, what are the things that I would like tell people for like why I think they should read it? It's like, well, I think it's like a perspective that is like diverse, and like that's like one of the goals clearly of this book is to highlight like a group of people who may not have had the chance to be as heard from, and to also make sure that it is like a wide group of people, so that even that perspective is not being flattened down just into like a box of like queer people of color, right? It's like saying like this is also very expansive for in a number of different direction. So like that's like I think reason number one why I would say to read it. I think it like for me helps to give some more context to a lot of like kind of like what Susan is talking about. Like there's a lot going on right now. Like how, like what are like obviously like having followed the internet, like I feel like I've seen parts of like how we got to where we are now, but also like highlighting specific people's stories that kind of shape not just like because like I feel like I hear from my perspective the stories of like the shitty people, right? Like I hear the story of like J.K. Rowling, right? And I don't like want that to be my like the voice that feels centered, even if it's because people are arguing with her, like even if the point is to yell at her. It's like ultimately when I think about like talking about like trans identities or like gender queerness or anything like that, I ultimately don't want like yelling at JK Rowling to be the thing that I think about, right? So it's like that's one of the other reasons why I'm really glad that I read this book, because I feel like okay, like this is a much better place for me to like to center what I'm understanding around, to not just have it framed around like the present day conflicts, but to have it like centered around something that is like more like about the actual people like who are like central to what's important here.
It's also just to the point of like not just framing it around present day conflicts. It is also really important and significant to review like the conflicts that have already happened too, of like that, you know, this is these are not new fights, right? Like none of these are not new fights. These are fights that people have been fighting for a very long time. And it's like, I don't know, as much as I would love to simply arrive at the moment of like victory and we're done, it's also like there are wins, and there are so many wins and losses along the way, and like having this again just a collection of like people who have been through this shit for decades, like talking through that experience, and sharing that experience, and you know, just being visible and being present, and also talking about how the presence and visibility of people in their lives, how that mattered to them when they were young, and to now, this doesn't really get talked about directly, but like they all talked about, there is a chapter where they talk about people that they saw around them, and then you get back to that chapter you mentioned, the what is that one? It's the beginning of the futures chapter, but futures part, but like that they are now that, like that later evolutions, like the ways in which they are now like those people for other people. I don't know, I appreciate
like
that.
a cycle.
Yes.
Yeah, definitely. And like I was thinking about this too, like in the like kind of returning it to present day conflicts. One of the like the moments, like in one of the last chapters, the visions for the future, one of them, Joan Benoit says, all the right wing stuff that's happening throughout the world, it's happening in a bunch of countries. I think that's their last hurrah. They're hanging on to that last little straw that they've got. They know they're going. They know they're a dying breed. That's why they're being as charged and as violent as they are. And it's one of those things where, like, you know, I don't know to what extent I believe that, but I also know that I like the idea of it, and like maybe that's an idea that you kind of have to like cling to like get everything else going, so that it's not just like I'm gonna like curl up in a corner and be like mad.
Right. If you, that is certainly a much more productive belief than all of this is terrible and will be terrible, you know, terrible and terrible and terrible forever. Like you do have to believe that that there is something, and there is something about hearing somebody who again like has been at this for decades and decades and decades now, to say like from the arc, there's the arc that we can see from our vantage point, and to have somebody with a longer, wider vantage point say, from where I am sitting, this is what it looks and feels like, is I think is very powerful. Like, and it is not a thing to be, even if you don't agree with that even if you feel like some reservations around that, it's also not an idea that any thinking person should dismiss lightly, just because this is somebody who has like just simply has a wider view than I do, just like period, point blank. So for me to say no, you're wrong and I'm right, like actually would be so arrogant and stupid. Yeah. We have a couple people who dropped in later, and just to say, somebody in the chat says, my local library did a podcast called The Gayest Generation, which was interviews with local elder queers, but it sounds like a more diverse group of experience, which yes, like that is like the central project here is the like the diversity of the other group of people that they interviewed for this. So worth emphasizing again and again. Wherever you're dropping into this stream, we both think you should read the book. That's our biggest takeaway. Our biggest takeaway is read the book, but also you should probably, our one note is that the biography should have been first. So read the book, but you should jump to about the narrators at the back of the book, and then read and then
go back to
that's our advice.
And like have it bookmarked, because you'll probably want to go back and
keep flipping. Just maybe put like a little tab for about the narrator, so that you can keep flipping back and get a reminder of who all the people are. Or pull up the website. I don't know, whatever.
Man, I know this is like also not the point, but like this like also really as academia has its problems, but like this book is part like the apparently the audio recordings and the photographs are stored at the Center for Oral History at Columbia University. I don't know to like what extent was it like this project like funded or anything. Let's see. It was Caro gave their thanks to the Center for Oral History Research at Columbia University for the excellent oral history training and for housing these voices in their online archive. Yeah, I mean, like,
Yeah.
I don't know. It just like makes me think about the value of having places for archives and having funding for archives and having people who run them, have people who train other people on them. Like there's a lot there.
Really important.
Yeah, and yeah, just I mean, like now I'm sitting in my feelings about information and like not to make it about the age of surveillance capitalism again, but like who decides and who decides, right? Like who decides what information gets stored and where it gets stored and how it gets stored, and like the value of real human voices in the age of AI, right? I don't know, like there's something about this book that now, like, I wasn't even thinking about this until like 5 minutes ago, but now I'm like, this book feels like it actually sits at the nexus of like so many things that are like scary about our world right now, where like it's like just thinking about just like, but like also in a way that is very, again, why I think you should read this book, right? Like, or like why I would tell people to read this book. Like, I think it's about being able to like engage directly with people and their words and having them stored, having them shared, having them just valued and like, and in some ways like also like not analyzed in the same way that like we would do with like something else, right? Like, I think like, I guess I should be careful about how I say that, because I also think like analysis is like a form of respect. Like it's a way of like engaging with what you're presented. Like you shouldn't like, I think like you shouldn't just be like, you know, like letting the words go by or whatever. Right. But it's like, I think having the books exist or having people's words exist in a form like this is also like, there's something about not surrounding it with other academic language that I think is really important too. Like kind of letting the words exist and kind of present the story. I don't want to say on their own, because I think that would also negate the work that's being put into this book. But yeah, that's just, I think I'm just trying to say like there's something about just having the words be the centerpiece.
Yes. Yeah, I mean it's the going back to, just not to like completely repeat myself, but it is the same thing as when we were talking about the age chapter, of like the difference between all of the like facts and figures and data that I have read and been exposed to over the years, and having somebody tell me in their own words, I attended 4 or 5 funerals a week. Like that, like those are it is a, the other thing is also valuable and important, like, and has a place, but like that on its own and being allowed to stand on its own is important and is worthwhile, and that should be allowed to stand on its own.
Yeah, and I think also, especially because, I mean, like an important facet of this book is that it is also all people of color. So that's like an important aspect of like the messiness, I guess. I don't know if messiness is the right way, but like the complications of how like gender and race like intersect with each other, and also like immigration status and all of these things. Like there's just so many. There's some like I think what I appreciate about the oral history aspect of this book is that it's not about trying to like come to a conclusion of what is like the way to be. It's saying like this is the way that people were, and they're not like saying also that like there's one way. Like it's just about this multitude of different experiences.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. So read it if you haven't.
Yep. Read it if you haven't. We're having a little existential crisis over here now about information and archives, and it's fine. I love that our girl Shoshana Zuboff once again got her shout.
That's not a book that I thought when we read it was going to be like the one that I always return to, because I will probably never reread
Actually
The Age of
read it,
Surveillance
sure.
Capitalism
Yeah, yeah.
unless like they come out with like the version for like fifth graders. Like then I will reread it. Like I will be like, okay, I can understand, I can handle this. Like I just like but like even still like the sheer like the sheer surveillance capitalism of it all, where it's just like, oh. How do we manage information? I guess at some point that book's going to get updated for the AI world probably, but we're not fully aware of what that's going to look like, are we?
If she does update it, we'll have to maybe have to revisit it for a future. I'll pick it. I'll make it my pick. And make a liar out of you. You'll read it. You'll have to read. You'll read.
I will. Yeah, when I was thinking about what books I want to read for next week, I was like, or not next week. We're not doing
Whoa,
this. Like,
whoa!
Surprise you guys!
Down.
I was like looking at them, like there's all these books about like AI, right, that are out right now.
Yeah,
but I was like, I don't know. I need to give AI some time before I can like.
Yes.
I gotta let it cook.
Yeah.
Before I can like figure out how we're gonna. About it, or how I want to read about it.
Just read Empire of AI.
Oh yeah, how was that?
Really good. I would highly recommend.
Okay,
whatever. I would reread it if you wanted to do it as a future nonfiction.
Yeah. It was on my possibilities list.
It's a good. It's like she's very clear in the beginning that it's not a business book, but like that is like the setup of the book is, I don't know, it's a business book, but does like a really good job of weaving through in addition to sort of telling the story of OpenAI, of like the broader kind of cultural context, and it's very, very, very readable, good, like well paced. So anyway, would highly recommend as you're trying to decide where you want to go in reading AI books. I recommend that one. It's I don't know that it's not a light read. It's depressing, to be clear, but like very, very easy to, it's like a quick paced read, I guess.
That's great. That's good to know.
So speaking of picking future books though, do you want to pick it? Do we want to do a poll? What's the vibe? What are you feeling?
Okay. I think I might want a dictator this time.
Okay. I support you.
And just pick it. And I also feel a little apologetic / defensive of this choice in advance. Okay. Because it's like not typically a book that she
gave me a list of 3, and if that's how you're prefacing, I know where I know where this is going.
You're already starting to type out the title. This is okay. So first of all, this is going to be a book that is not out until next week, and I think it's a fairly anticipated book. It is a celebrity biography, so there are a number of ways in which that is like not really typical for us. This is Gwyneth by Amy Odell. It is a biography of Gwyneth Paltrow, a person who I never before would have thought I wanted to read a biography of, but I follow Amy Odell's newsletter, The Back Row, and I really like her writing. And one of the reasons why I want to read this biography is she's talked about how one of the threads that she's exploring in the book is the relationship of Gwyneth to wellness culture, and like the fact that Goop is like really kind of been a force in wellness culture. And so I'm just like really I think I was also kind of wanting something that would be kind of a fun listen, and I thought it would be like kind of fun to listen to a biography of Gwyneth Paltrow. The wellness culture / medical misinformation part might not be, but hopefully the other things. So again, I am preemptively defensive of this choice, but I hope that the weirdness works. It feels insulting to go from like so many stars to like, you guys, we're gonna read the biography of Gwyneth Paltrow. And for context, my other 2 books that I had, because the theme of this, the books that I sent to Nicole were books that I had like learned about from people I follow on Substack. And one of the people I follow is writing a book about online dating. And she had recently watched The Materialists and had some complaints. And so she was recommending some books about like the history of relationships, so like dating and marriage. So those were the other options on this list. And they may show up again in the future because they do sound interesting. But again, like there was something about going from like an oral history of trans-binary, genderqueer, and two-spirit people of color to Gwyneth or marriage that I was like, oh, I feel like we're taking a hard turn.
Whatever. That is the spirit. That's the true spirit of Nonfiction Book Club, I feel.
Yeah.
So I think that's solid. I also like, it's surprising to me actually that we haven't done a biography. Like that feels, we've done a pretty diverse collection of kinds.
So
of
I think it
books
would also
over
be
the
fun to
years.
try something new.
Yes. Yeah, we did. Because we have, I don't know. I feel like we've got a good range of different kinds of things. I think this is our first oral history that we did.
Yep.
I like when we're branching out and trying new kinds of things. So
yeah,
I'm
one day
ready.
we'll try well, I was gonna say we'll try a self-help book, but I guess Bittersweet was kind of a little self-help.
Yeah, Bittersweet. We didn't. It turned out to be unexpectedly.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll try a real one on purpose. Try one on purpose and not be insulted.
You know what we could do is a memoir because Sheena Shea of Vanderpump Rules fame has published her memoir.
We could do a memoir. I am not reading Sheena Shea's. Actually refuse. That woman is too delusional. I simply cannot engage. I cannot engage with hundreds of pages of her own delusion like that. It would piss me off too much.
I started engaging with her delusions in college, and I will continue engaging with them for decades to come.
Being like there's a layer of removal of like watching her be delusional on television. Different
for sure.
Than her trying to narrate back to you. Like I watched it. I watched you on TV, girl.
Yeah.
I know how this happened. I know what this. I know what this and that was. You're not gonna gaslight me into believing that the important thing about Sandoval was how much it sucked for you. Shut up. Anyway, this concludes my rant on Sheena Shea.
Nicole is not letting me do what I want to do with Nonfiction Book Club. This will lead to the end of Nonfiction Book Club. We will disband. We will break up over Sheena.
And then we'll write an oral history about the dissolution of Nonfiction Book Club. And it'll be great. It'll be great.
Yep.
All right. Well.
Yes, we'll let you all know when we're doing the Gwyneth book.
Sometime next month. Or in September. Who can say when?
Yeah, it'll happen one day.
It'll happen one day. So anyway, thanks for hanging out. And if you haven't already, read this book. Okay? Okay.
Yes.
Read this book. Great.